Everyone, welcome to this Tuesday's edition of the CI Chit Chat. As always, I'm Mitchell Hora. I'm the founder and CEO. I've got a special guest here with me today, Brad. He's my COO. We'll get some of his stuff here in just a little bit, some of Brad's perspective here, and some of what he's seeing from his role here at Continuum Ag. But for all of you that are potentially new to this, by means of quick intro, like I said, I'm the founder and CEO. I'm also a farmer from Southeast Iowa, Brad Farms, in East Central, Northeast Iowa kind of area, closer to Waterloo. On my side, we always start these with just a quick overview of what the heck is CI for any of you that are new to this. Okay, it's a continually it's really a new concept, so we always like to start with kind of the basics. Carbon intensity is essentially the carbon footprint per bushel, and as far as what it means to us on the farm. So it's the carbon footprint per bushel, and that's important because the carbon footprint per bushel is part of the carbon footprint per gallon of ethanol, or per pound of beef, or per gallon of milk. The footprint that we have on the farm is part of the scope 3 carbon footprint of the next players in the supply chain. The big and that score is all of your carbon inputs, diesel fuel, fertilizer, every pass across the field divided by the yield, the outcome. So lower inputs divided by higher yield lowers the CI score and lowers that overall number. The number comes from the Department of Energy, and the Department of Energy put out this tool called the GREET model, which is what's utilized to calculate carbon intensity for biofuels. They actually released the GREET model in the 90s, and they're coming out with a new version of the GREET model. It's supposed to come anytime. We were promised March 1, and as you guys know, that did not happen. We are still waiting, and not a whole lot of update there. On March 1, the IRS and the Department of Energy punted, and they said we aren't going to release this model or not release the rules like we promised. Instead, we're going to wait, kick the can down the road. So we're still waiting to hear when they're going to release that update. A big piece of the update is going to be in regards to the indirect land use change, but so that's going to hurt the score a little bit. But we are hearing that they are going to allow for the soil organic carbon components to be part of improving the CI, which means all of us that have been working on building soil health and getting great CI scores, that is going to be counted to the fullest extent. So that's a huge positive. The everyone still continues to need to get their scores put together to get ready for 45Z, because it's still supposed to start on January 1, 2025. So the crop that we are growing this year going into that low carbon fuel, we've launched our billion bushel challenge in December, and we've got some brand new hot off the press updated numbers. We've scored 154 million bushels of corn. So well on our way to getting to that billion bushel number here this year, like our goal was. 154 million bushels already, and an average CI score with today's version of the GREET model, average score of just 10.6. The county default number for most of the counties in the Midwest is around 29 to 30. And we found our average farmer to be at just 10.6. So making big strides. But Brad, a lot of companies starting to catch on. A lot of companies starting to figure this out. Maybe give a quick intro on yourself and share. You were at a meeting here recently where CI was the topic.
Oh,
Maybe
yes.
fill us in on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to be here. Brad McDonald, like Mitchell said, from Northeast Iowa, originally fifth generation farmer on my farm. Our claim to fame is we also grow hogs on the farm, and we had the big boar at the Iowa State Fair for 3 years. So if you ever made it to the Iowa State Fair and saw Big Mac, Big Buck, or Itty Bitty, those were grown on the McDonald farm. So yeah, kind of my career's taken me all over the place as a grain merchandiser for Bunge and ag financer with Wells Fargo. Ended up in the entrepreneurship world and connected with Mitchell here in 2020 and been their CEO and yeah, happy to be here. But yeah, as far as the scuttlebutt with the latest and greatest on CI. That's why we're all here. And specifically, the number one question that I continue to get is, what's the farmer going to get paid? And the official answer that we have to give until someone is willing, or until the rules officially come out, is we don't know for sure. Really what we're talking about with CI is the potential, the potential value that people are going to be able to get, and that is truly an unknown for sure until we have the rules. That said, some of the players out there are talking about what they're going to be giving back to the farmer after their costs are taken into account. So just so everyone understands, the ethanol plants are going to be participating in this. Every single bushel that goes through their scales will have a CI score associated with it in 2025. It's either going to be the standard score or it's going to be a certified score. And that's what all of our farmers that we work with are working toward, is that certified, that official certified score. So what the ethanol plants specifically are looking at is what are they going to do to lower their CI footprint? And it's really two different ways, because the pipeline isn't really going to be available. It's their own infrastructure or utilizing the farmer. And from what it feels like is the focus has been mostly on the infrastructure piece. They're trying to understand, okay, what renewable energy can we use to lower the carbon footprint of their plants specifically, and they're not as clear on the farmer piece. And that's where I think we can, as farmers, really have a voice in this to say, hey, we will do the heavy lifting when it comes to lowering our CI score.
Mhm.
And the example that Mitchell's alluding to, as far as the meeting that I attended, was with Louis Dreyfus in Grand Junction, Iowa, where they said if the farmer is able to do this heavy lifting after our costs, they're not going to even take a percent. They're going to pass the value, all the entire value, onto the farmer. And that to me, I think, is a very hopeful message to the farmer, because we've been talking as far as, is it 50%? Is it some variation of 50 to 100, whatever that is. Now, keep in mind, they also are skeptical. They're skeptical of whether or not the rules are going to be in play. They're also skeptical, okay, what's this all look like? But they have gone on record to say, if we are able to figure it out, then we are able to pass along 100% of the value to the farmer.
Yeah, which
So,
is wild, wild. But it's
massive.
but what's so encouraging though too, to your point, like most of the conversations that we've had up to this point, the ethanol companies are telling me, yeah, maybe a third to 50% to the farmer.
Yeah.
Where these guys are saying, hey, farmer, we need to cover our costs, but then whatever we can pass to you, we'll pass it to you. And
Yeah.
because they want that low carbon corn and seeing some of the opportunities in the future with sustainable aviation fuel or other market outcomes, right? So now I don't think the farmer getting all of that money is going to be the norm, and good chances that maybe they're not going to fully be able to keep to that because they don't know the rules yet.
Yeah.
And by the rules we mean they don't have the final version of the GREET model, and they
Mhm.
therefore they don't know what is their starting CI going to be, and then how can they really get it lower. So in 45Z, each ethanol plant or biofuel refiner, renewable diesel manufacturer, sustainable aviation fuel provider, they need to get their CI score below 50. Today, most ethanol plants that we're talking to are anywhere from like 52 to 57. Some of them are a little closer to 60. So, depending on how the new GREET model gets rolled out, their score could be not that impacted or could be made a little bit worse, meaning a little bit further from 50 and therefore harder to get in the money. So that's why they're not sure yet. And but what we know for certain is it's going to take data to get below 50, and it's going to take volume. Most ethanol plant, we have some pretty cool tools built out where we can run scenarios for ethanol plants. And most scenarios show that each plant needs to get at least 20% farmer participation to get their CI score low enough to make this worth it. If the Department of Energy hurts corn-based ethanol, because of how they're going to lay out some of these default numbers and stuff in the GREET model, that could mean that the ethanol companies need more like 50% farmer participation or even more. And
Yep.
the only way that they're going to get that is to start really talking about this. And Brad, that's why they hosted this meeting, right? It was
Yep.
no promises, we're not rolling out a thing, but hey, be aware.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think that they are going to come to the realization that they have to rely on the farmer in order to get the number low enough to be in the money. And that's how I like to talk about it is what's it going to take to be in the money? And that's the true unknown. The law is that they have to be under 50 in order to hit that. And a lot of farmers that I talk to, they all the probably the number two question that I get all the time is, well, what about the pipeline? Are we irrelevant when the pipeline comes through? And the answer is absolutely not. It really is. It's an yes and situation where you can tap into the pipeline, you lower your points by 30, but you still have a long way to go in order to get to zero. And that's the goal here. The whole point of this is they get rewarded for every point that they get below between 50 to zero. Once they hit zero, now they're maxing out their
Yeah.
true value. But Mitchell, when you're talking about the starting point, that's just going to speak to the more importance of the farmer in
Yeah.
this, the farmer piece in this. We just become that much more important. And when you're talking about now our 154 million bushels at 10.6, 10.6 ain't nothing. And the example that they give, that I've heard at least, is they're looking at infrastructure tens of millions of dollars, $40 million to lower their points by maybe five,
Yeah.
and that's really to improve the efficiencies of their plant. Well, here we've got a 20 point swing that we can bring right at the table here,
Yeah.
and the farmers are willing and ready to provide that value to the farm or to the ethanol plant. We just have to be rewarded for it, and so
Yeah.
that's the key piece here.
Yeah, it's got to be about helping each other out. And that's really what we're doing all of this for. And some of our messaging can sometimes get taken out of context where what we're coming off as oh, we're bringing these farmers and it's rallying the farmer troops and we're going to own our data, we're going to have these low CIs and the ethanol companies got to pay for it. That's not the point here. The point here is ethanol guys, we can't do this without you, and you can't really maximize this without the farmer. Let's work together here and let's go make some of this money and bring it back to our small towns working together. That's what this is about. And the biofuel companies, they don't know how the rules are going to work out yet. But on the farm, one thing I can guarantee is you will get $0 if you have no data. The only way you're going to be able to get anything is with the data. And that is what the companies are actually buying, because that's what they have to utilize to report to the IRS. Now,
Yeah.
Keith, good question in the chat here on like, so those ethanol companies, how much lower does an ethanol plant need to be to call their fuel a low carbon fuel? There isn't necessarily a definition of that, Keith. It's just any point lower than 50 is worth up to 2 cents per point per gallon. And it's up to because there's some red tape that they have to go through in regards to maintaining prevailing wage and a registered apprenticeship program. There's some red tape to it, right? It's a government kind of thing, but we've got some solutions on being able to help the companies to overcome that, and it shouldn't be that big of a deal. But any point below 50, I suppose, would technically be a low carbon fuel, but the lower you go, the better. And to Brad's point, you can stack, you can have a heat reclamation system, use solar panels, have a pipeline, and still buy low CI corn. And still, you probably would be far from getting all the way down to zero and
Yeah.
maxing this thing out. It really takes all of us working together here. And we're just trying to make sure that farmers, we need to know what your score is. And just, as you're talking with your buddies at the biofuel plants or the local elevator, gosh, that keeps coming up a lot in my conversations recently. How do we get the local elevator on board? It's like, I'm trying to talk to them more at Continuum. We keep hiring people like crazy. Like, gosh, we are having the conversations, but all of us need to just continue to communicate with our local folks saying, hey, there's real opportunity to be had here. We're ready, to help and be part of this. Let's go make this happen. Let's work together to make this happen. We've got to continue to drive that conversation. And they're going to say, well, we don't know the rules yet. And we say, yeah, we understand, but still we can at least start talking about it and at least get our data organized, because the only way that this really happens is if we have enough volume of low carbon bushels to move the weighted average low enough. But Brad, I think what's really interesting on your side, maybe share your specific farmer story a little bit. You weren't necessarily a regen farmer, like
Yeah.
not at
Yeah.
all. And I don't know that you'd consider yourself one now, but
Yeah.
you're on the journey because you're
Want to be. Try to be. Yeah.
trying. But see it, maybe explain a little bit of kind of that story and where you're at now and how your scores have lined up, even being brand new to all of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So, even growing up on the pig farm, we had enough land to feed the pigs essentially. And I bought my own ground in 2019. So I like to point to a couple of analog years just to kind of show people, okay, what exactly is the potential based on your different practices? Because I was conventional, full conventional everything in my area. It's very much black dirt into planting season. So if you don't have black dirt, there's something wrong. You have a weedy field. That whole cover crop thing is pretty scary in my neck of the woods. But essentially, the years I like to point to in 2019, I was full conventional everything, full plow in the fall, vertical till in the spring, no cover crops, anhydrous to the max, no manure, and ended up with a 25 score. And so when I run those practices through the GREEP model, the score with a 200 bushel yield, my score was a 25. So
Mhm.
that's full conventional everything, and with 29 being the standard, that would still be in the money,
Yeah.
right? And so that
It'd be
math
whether it
works
be in
out.
the money or probably most of the ethanol companies probably won't pay for those first couple points. But point being is it's still better than 29.
Yeah, it's better than the standard, and yeah, we don't know what that's going to look like as far as whether or not the ethanol companies will pay for a score like that. But just using the math off of 29, that's still better than the standard, right?
Yeah.
And so the point is that so many of these carbon credit programs, that's why I like to say this is not a carbon credit program at all,
Mhm.
because you don't even have to be doing regen practice necessarily to qualify. It just depends what your score ends up being. That's why it's so important to understand where you are. This is not just for the regen guys. Obviously, the regen guys are going to be able to capitalize much more than the regular conventional guys, but the conventional guys can still be the high yield guys. I mean, yield is such a big component in the
Yeah.
factor for CI scoring that yeah, you might be in the money and not even know it. But so that's one analog year, is the 2019 year. Another analog year would be 2020. I got hit by derecho, and so it crushed my yield. So here I'm doing full conventional practices, and I had poor yield. My score was a 50. So there is that risk when people talk about what's the actual risk. To me, it's not necessarily what the ethanol plant is going to participate in or what percent is going back to the farmer. The farmer should realize it's all about what you can control. The real risk is what your practices and what your yield ends up being on your own farm, because that is the possibility of knocking you out. Is if you have a poor yield, poor year, you end up with a score like mine of being 50. There's no way I would have capitalized on that, and that's just the way it goes. That's farming, as we all know. But then I started trying this regen path, right? So my first year trying it was the crop year 2022. Put out my cover crops in the fall of 21, all that good stuff, and had a good weather year. Ended up with a 260 yield, and my score was a negative 4.3. So doing the cover crop, doing the manure, doing all the regen practices was essentially to chase the whole regen practices. Working with Continuum Ag, I became more of a believer, and even though I am still a skeptic, I was chasing the lower fertilizer over time, and doing those practices ended up with that negative 4.3, which is close to $465 in value per acre.
Mhm.
And doing those same practices, I signed up for a carbon credit program that paid me on average $30 an acre. Well, now I'm providing a value of 460, which
Yeah.
would have been, if let's say if I got 50% of that, that's $230 that I would have, that a farmer could have pocketed just from doing those practices
Huge.
and documenting it. And Mitchell, to your point, it's obviously very crucial that the data piece, it's the collection of the data, but it's still not worth anything until it's certified.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're trying to help the farmer just navigate, is that certification piece is so crucial. I liken it to an organic farmer. You could be doing all the practices for organics, but until you actually get that stamp of certification, you
Yeah,
don't get
man,
to sell a certified organic product, right?
it's a great.
So for all those farmers that have been doing the right thing, been doing the regen practices, that's the key focus here, is what's it going to take to get you certified,
Yeah.
because that's the only way that you're going to get paid is with that
Well, at
certification.
least get paid a substantial amount, right? And
That's
yeah,
right.
that's a great analogy that on the organic farmer, you've got to go
Yeah.
through verification and get that stamp of approval because
Yeah.
that label is what brings value. Okay, it's
That's
the
right.
practices behind it that attribute to the label, but it's the label that brings value. And now
Yes.
we're just like after seeing that, right? And on your story, you
Yeah.
got involved in Continuum Ag. There were some of these other carbon things, right, that everyone's been exploring. And
Yeah.
at the time, $30, like, hey, that's not a bad
It's the
deal.
cherry on top. That,
Yeah,
I mean,
cherry top.
is
But you were making money with these practices, right? And that's where we were helping and doing some
yeah.
consulting stuff. And it was making money on its own, right? But and you cut some fertilizer with the Haney test and all that, right?
Yeah.
Kind of the traditional Continuum Ag story. But now
Yeah.
it's like, okay, that value can put some dollars in your pocket, but it's the value for that ethanol plant too. And the
That's right.
value that they just need to tap into your data and collaborate with the farmer. And now we can grow the pie, grow the tax
Yeah.
credit pie. But to your point, it's got to be certified. Okay. And our buddy Jack's got a great question here. Have the rules been defined to be CI certified? And Brad's actually really integral at Continuum Ag, leading the charge. There are no rules yet, Jack. We are the first ones going through this process with a third party verifier. We're talking with a couple of them. Essentially, what we are doing is just like that organic farmer, right? The organic farmer brings in a verifier and they say, on these fields, I claim that I'm organic. And the verifier says, okay, what were your practices? And you say, here were my practices. And they say, okay, yep, this qualifies, this qualifies, this qualifies. Okay, good. You didn't do anything that disqualifies you. So you're organic. In CI, what we are doing is claiming here was my yield for this field and here was my CI score. And then the verifier says, okay, let's check the math. That's step one. So they check the math and they run the GREET model on their own, right? Because we've got it fully automated and we continue to make sure that we are running the scores correctly. So they check the math on your claim and then they go through the records saying, okay, you claimed cover crop. Can we prove it? Yep. Okay, we can see you have the as applied map or the receipt or whatever it may be. Okay, the fertilizer or the manure or the yield or the pesticide usage. Can we verify that each of those items happened? They check, 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 check. Yep, yep, yep. We can see that all happened because at Continuum Ag, that's our main program, right? $5 an acre. We get you an agronomist or work with your local dealer agronomist for Continuum and get all that data put together so that when we submit it to the verifier, they can easily check the math and easily see, yep, all this stuff happened, stamp of approval. Now we can go get it sold. And the conversations that we're having, that's going to be the difference of you can enroll in you can enroll in some of these pilot programs today at the ethanol plant, and they're paying 2 to 5 cents a bushel for just throw some data into their system and they'll pay you a couple of cents. They're pilot projects. 45Z doesn't start until this year's crop. Okay. But it's a couple cents, put some data in there, and then they'll verify it after the fact. What we are doing is making sure that that data is verified before the corn is sold or before the corn crosses the scales, getting all that data organized, getting the data put together so that as a farmer, when you are saying, hey, I'm selling you corn with a score of negative 4.3 like Brad's, they're going to say, whoa, 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 you want how, like, if we're going to pay you a substantial portion of this credit, we got to see that this data is real because now they've got to have their liability avoided. They got to avoid risk. And the only way to do that is to have that data, have it third party verified, and the CI score goes on the scale ticket, which is how they are going to actually transact upon it. We help farmers get their CI score organized for each field, get it verified, and help you to go and get paid with some of our preferred partners. But basically, Jack and everyone here, it ends up being every single pass across the field, we need to have some kind of way to back it up. There will also be some type of a farmer attestation, just like federal crop insurance. But happy to chat more on that. Step one is knowing what your CI score is, and then you can do that at topsoil.ag and then see if this program is going to work for you. But nonetheless, it's all about getting the data organized. And the data, whether you're going to go through organic verification, enroll in somebody's sustainability program, or maybe tap into the CI opportunity, it all takes the data. All right, a couple other things here real quick. So question from Mike that came in with our, we have a link. So if you have questions throughout the week, you utilize that link. But Mike's asking about, have we heard about the cost of direct injection systems for people that aren't on the pipeline, right? So you can either be on the pipeline or you might be able to directly sequester carbon on your own. Very, very expensive. And like we've been talking, having a carbon capture and storage or CCS, having that system lowers your score by like 25 to 30 points. So whether it be a pipeline that takes your CO2 as a liquid to North Dakota and then puts it in a hole in the ground, or Wyoming is where the pipeline going through Nebraska goes to. You can either pipe it somewhere, then go down, or some plants can go straight down. That does lower their score significantly, gets them in the money, but there's only 2 ethanol plants in the country that are actually sequestering that carbon right now. They're both in North Dakota, and by and large, companies need to be looking at the farmers to help to lower that score, but it takes volume. It takes a
Mitchell,
volume
isn't there
of farmers.
something about it's the geography base, right? Not
Yeah,
every
so
ethanol plant would have that ability to go straight down, right?
yep, it's about your geological formations underground. So basically having these like kind of caverns underneath the ground. I think they're like 2 miles deep is where most of these are going, like very deep in the ground. And basically having the geological shale is what they call it. So it's a shale formation that you can put that liquid CO2 back underground. Versus we've been, of course, pumping that carbon out of the ground as natural gas and as oil, right? Now this is basically the opposite, putting it back. But yeah, very, very costly, but it lowers the score by a lot. But it's a and both scenario. If they get those pipelines put together or get carbon capture, cool. That opens up some additional opportunities, but the farmer piece is still really important. All right, one other here from our buddy
Yeah,
Brian.
with storage. Yep.
How do you propose that the data is certified for the farmer with no storage and has to deliver direct from the field? Great question, Brian. So what we are doing is utilizing the farmer's APH or their typical yields or projected yields. And then when if a farmer is selling direct to town, whether that be direct to the ethanol plant or to the elevator, they basically are selling a non-verified CI score to begin with an anticipated CI score that we still help to provide, but there will be a 2 tranche payment system. Okay, so a potential for an estimated payment upon delivery, and then a second tranche after verification. And a lot of the ethanol plants might do this as well. I'm hearing a lot of them talking about pay a percentage of the 45Z tax credit value upon delivery and pay a percentage at the end. Because then they'll know exactly how much money they actually made in this space. They'll know exactly what their CI score ended up being. They know exactly that this is going to be legit. So it kind of spreads the risk out a little bit. So a farmer that's selling direct to town, he won't be fully verified yet. You might have gone through a pre-verification, and that's what we're doing. We're going to submit data for verification likely in September, even though we don't have the yields yet, but we can verify everything else up to that final yield. And then all we got to do is get the yield verified and added to that final report. And then the farmers are getting their real payment amount, but likely will be pay for a estimated CI score up front or upon delivery, and then a second tranche later on once the farmer is fully verified. Once the ethanol plants or the elevators know exactly how this is going to work out. All right, one more here quick. Will ethanol plants see the farmer data or just the certified CI score? I love that question, Eric. Our intent is the ethanol plant or the Elevator will only see the CI score, not the farmer data. Okay, we built our own system here, built our own software as farmers, as agronomists, because we know that this data is super valuable and we've got to protect that data because that's ultimately what makes us competitive in the long haul and doesn't just get us squeezed out of any of this potential money that's coming in. So we've got to control and own that data. In our policy statement, you can see it at topsoil.ag when you create an account. You can see our policy statement. The farmer owns their own data. The farmer is in control. Even to our third-party verifier, at the end of the year, there's an attestation and a data release that the farmer will sign. It'll be like a DocuSign, right? So it'll be a DocuSign that says, yep, I want to get verified. And I, as the farmer, release my data to the named third-party verifier. And that's it. Then now you have a verified CI score that, again, the farmer owns. Then the farmer chooses who they want to sell their corn to or their soybeans and sell their data. And we just enable that to happen. But ultimately, the farmer owns it. All that needs to go on the scale ticket is the CI score and the verification ID. If there's an additional audit, we will let you know. We will figure out how do we need to comply with that audit. Who is that auditor? What do they need to see? But at this point, these ethanol plants or the elevator, they do not need to see the actual data. As long as it's already been verified, farmer, you continue to own that. And as far as what everything we know today and the conversation that we're having, your data does not need to actually leave topsoil, except that the third-party verifier, if you get audited, they'll need to take a look. But even then, it'll just be getting them brought into topsoil and just showing them the bits and pieces. All right, we got to go rapid fire. We got to wrap up here. What if you don't have all the fields certified and commingled grain? So Jack, good question. It's either the field, so it's field by field verification, right? Field by field certification verification. So if a field is certified, it has that field CI score. If a field is not certified, it uses the county default score. And then if you blend those together, now you've got in your farm, Jack, where you're doing a lot of these practices, you'd have a really low score on the verified one and a really high score where it's not verified because you have to use the county default. There at this point, there's no what they call it, like a mass balance type of thing. There's no, well, here's my typical practices and I can utilize this field score and put it onto this field because they're both mine. We don't have that right now. Just like in organic, you can't have this field be verified as organic and say, well, I also manage this field, so therefore that one's verified organic. It doesn't work that way. At least everything we know right now. Okay, so it's each individual field, each bushel getting verified, then getting commingled at the on-farm storage or at the elevator. All right, last one. We got it. We got to be done here. Oh man, they keep coming in. Diana, please grab some of these. Tim, yes, all of these chats are recorded. They are on our YouTube page. They get up there super fast. Continuum Ag on YouTube. All of our recordings are on there. Decatur, Illinois ADM has been buying carbon emissions for more than a decade. 2 ADM-led projects stored around 3.5 million tons. That's awesome. Thanks, Joanne. Yeah, ADM has other pilot projects going on as well. We're in communication with those guys, looking at, hey, could we bring more low carbon farmers to the table? Continuum Ag's job and all this is farmer. We want to help you to get your data organized. Whoever is going to compensate you for it, whoever you want to work with, we help you to move that data so you don't have to double enter. Just making it simple. All right, we got to wrap up. We're over time. Brad, any final parting thoughts? This is a good one and good to have your perspective on here.
No, it's just good to be a farmer. Honestly, I know that corn prices or just commodity price in general are poor right now, and farmers are looking for any way to take an opportunity to try and improve their balance sheets. This is the best one that I'm seeing out there. You know, from I wrote a check for my insurance here recently, $65 an acre. I'm not expecting these types of returns, right? So farmers are used to getting screwed on a lot of these programs. This is not a carbon program. That's the most important takeaway here. And to me, it's a no-brainer to participate.
Love that. Thanks, guys. We will see you next Tuesday back here on the Chit Chat.